Homeless man offers half of his sandwich to Adam Sandler. His act touched the whole world. The early morning air in Los Angeles had a rare crispness that only the winter months brought. The sun barely peeked over the horizon, casting a pale orange hue over the empty sidewalks of Hollywood Boulevard. Street cleaners moved with sleepy precision, washing away the remnants of the previous night's revelry. Shopkeepers raised their metal shutters, preparing for another unpredictable day in the City of Angels. Among the familiar chaos was David Morales, a 54-year-old man with salt and pepper hair and deep lines etched into his sun-beaten face. His heavy canvas jacket, once navy blue, had faded to an indeterminate gray. David's belongings, 2 small duffel bags and a worn sleeping bag, were neatly stacked beside him under the covered entrance of a closed bookstore. He folded the blanket carefully, as he always did, a small act of control in an otherwise unpredictable world. David had not always lived on the streets. There had been a time of routine, of steady work in construction and warm dinners at home. A workplace injury and mounting medical bills had slowly unraveled that life. Now his days were defined by survival and his nights by the chilling loneliness of the streets. As the sun rose higher, the boulevard came alive with tourists, street performers, and the occasional paparazzo. David made his way to the nearby community center, where volunteers handed out day-old bread and hot coffee. He accepted his share gratefully, then walked toward his usual spot near the corner of Hollywood and Vine. Today, though, there was a small treat. A turkey sandwich wrapped in wax paper that one of the volunteers had slipped into his hand with a soft smile. David hadn't had turkey in months. He sat on a bench, opened the sandwich, and savored the first bite slowly. The meat was dry, the bread a little stale, but to him it tasted like a feast. As he chewed, David noticed a man walking by in casual clothes. Basketball shorts, a faded green hoodie, and worn-out sneakers. The stranger's salt and pepper beard and unmistakable features gave David pause. The man had a familiar, almost comforting presence. Without a crowd of cameras or an entourage, he could have been any regular Angeleno out for a walk. But David's eyes lingered. The stranger sat down on the bench opposite him and sighed deeply, rubbing his face as though he were shaking off exhaustion. He wore large sunglasses, but even behind the lenses, his demeanor was unmistakably warm. David, following an instinct rooted in years of quiet compassion, tore his sandwich in half, wrapped one piece in the wax paper, and extended it. "Hey, man, you look like you could use a bite," David said kindly. The stranger paused and tilted, his head in surprise. There was a long moment of silence. Slowly, he accepted the half sandwich with a soft chuckle. "Thank you. That's very kind of you," the man said. His voice was familiar, the gentle cadence unmistakable to millions worldwide. David simply smiled. "No problem. We all gotta eat, right?" The stranger nodded. They sat there in quiet companionship for a few moments, chewing their humble meal amidst the noise of a city that never quite stopped moving. It wasn't about charity, it was about dignity. David had nothing, yet offered everything he had. A young woman walking by suddenly stopped and gasped. She fumbled for her phone. Whispering excitedly, she pointed at the man on the bench. "Is that Adam Sandler?" she mouthed to no one in particular. David blinked, his brow furrowed. Adam Sandler, the name registered slowly. The stranger gave a small, knowing smile and raised a finger to his lips in a silent plea for discretion. The woman complied, but not before snapping a candid photo from afar. 2 men sharing a sandwich, an ordinary act in an extraordinary city. She posted it with a simple caption. "A homeless man just shared his sandwich with Adam Sandler. Humanity still exists." Within minutes, the photo was picked up by a local influencer, then a radio station. By noon, it had gone viral, ricocheting across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thousands of people commented, some in disbelief, others moved by the simple gesture. Meanwhile, David had no idea what was unfolding online. He simply waved goodbye to the stranger, who thanked him again with a gentle handshake. "Take care of yourself, friend," Adam said quietly, before disappearing into the crowd. David smiled as he finished his sandwich, unaware that his life and the world's view of kindness was about to change forever. By the time David returned to his spot later that afternoon, the city's rhythm had shifted in a way he couldn't quite place. People seemed to glance at him more often, not with the usual hurried pity or awkward avoidance, but with genuine curiosity. A few even smiled as they passed, some nodding in acknowledgement. David, unaware of the growing buzz, attributed it to a rare good mood in the city. After all, the sun was shining, the temperature was mild, and sometimes even Los Angeles had its better days. A few blocks away, however, the story was exploding. News outlets picked up the image and began crafting headlines. "Homeless man's act of kindness moves Hollywood star. A sandwich and a lesson in humanity. Adam Sandler's humble encounter reminds us what matters." Television crews scrambled to find out more. Influencers demanded to know the identity of the homeless hero. Speculation ran wild. Who was he? What was his story? Meanwhile, Adam Sandler, known for his low-key lifestyle and aversion to media frenzy, issued a rare public statement through his assistant. "The man I met today reminded me of the kindness we often overlook. He gave without hesitation. I won't forget it. Please remember, real heroes rarely wear capes or even shoes." The brief statement only fueled more curiosity. Back at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, David sat cross-legged on the sidewalk, organizing his few possessions. His sandwich wrapper lay crumpled in his pocket, a small reminder of the brief, warm moment he had shared with a stranger who needed comfort just as much as he did. A young couple approached him hesitantly, their phones clutched tightly. "Hey, excuse me," the woman said. She wore a denim jacket covered in colorful pins. "Are you the guy who shared a sandwich with Adam Sandler?" David looked up, confused. "What?" The man beside her nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, the internet's going crazy about it. You're like famous right now." David chuckled, a raspy surprise sound. "Famous? For sharing a sandwich?" They both smiled. "For being a good person," the woman corrected gently. Unsure of what else to say, David simply nodded. The couple handed him a $20 bill and asked if they could take a photo with him. He agreed, still bewildered, and smiled awkwardly for the picture. As the day wore on, more people came. Some brought food, others left money, sleeping bags, and even handwritten notes. Volunteers from local shelters stopped by, asking if he needed help or wanted a place to stay. The attention was overwhelming. David, who had spent years blending into the background, was now the center of a movement he didn't understand. By nightfall, local news vans had parked across the street, their bright lights cutting into the dusk. Reporters craned their necks, trying to spot the man who had reminded the world of its own humanity. David felt torn. On one hand, the food, blankets, and kindness warmed him in ways he hadn't felt in years. On the other hand, he knew how quickly public attention could fade. He had seen it before, moments of viral kindness, promises of change, only for the world to move on once the novelty wore off. As he huddled beneath his sleeping bag, the muffled sounds of reporters talking into cameras drifted over him. He closed his eyes, praying silently for strength. This wasn't the kind of fame he had ever imagined. He didn't even want fame. All he had done was what he believed any decent person should do. In a sleek office downtown, Adam Sandler sat with his team, watching the media storm unfold. He rubbed his temples and made a decision. "We have to find him," Adam said quietly. "Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, for real." His manager frowned. "You sure you want to get personally involved?" These things can get messy. Adam looked up, his eyes tired but determined. He gave me half his sandwich. He didn't know who I was. He just saw a guy who needed a little kindness. I owe him that much, and maybe more. Across Los Angeles, two very different lives were about to collide again. This time not by accident, but by purpose. And neither David nor Adam could have imagined how deeply their second meeting would change them both. The following morning, Los Angeles felt different to David. There was a hum in the air, an almost tangible current of expectation. Strangers still approached him with kind words, warm coffee and care packages. Every gesture chipped away at the wall of resignation he had built around himself over the years. At the same time, David remained cautious. He had seen moments of attention fade as quickly as they arrived. He didn't trust sudden kindness born of viral fame. Yet he appreciated the small comforts the moment had brought him: clean socks, a hot meal, and genuine smiles. Unbeknownst to David, Adam Sandler had spent the previous evening mobilizing his contacts quietly. He wanted to meet David again, not in front of flashing cameras or for a photo op, but in private. He sent his assistant Greg, a former social worker, to the streets with a simple mission: find the man with the sandwich. Greg canvassed Hollywood Boulevard with an old photo printed from the viral post. At every corner, he asked shopkeepers, security guards, even other homeless individuals, "Have you seen this guy?" Greg's voice was patient but persistent. Most shook their heads, but eventually an older woman in a purple beanie smiled knowingly. "You're looking for David. He sits near the bookstore on Vine most mornings." Following the lead, Greg spotted David exactly where she had said. David sat on the ground, legs crossed, staring at the steady flow of traffic with a thoughtful expression. Greg approached cautiously. "David?" David looked up, puzzled. "Yeah? My name's Greg. I work with Adam Sandler. He's hoping to see you again, if you're up for it." David blinked in disbelief. "You're serious?" Greg smiled warmly. "Dead serious." David hesitated. Years of hardship had taught him to question people's intentions. Still, something in Greg's calm demeanor felt sincere. Slowly, David stood and dusted off his pants. "All right, lead the way." They walked several blocks to a small cafe tucked away from the crowds. It was intentionally discreet. Inside, Adam waited at a back table, wearing his signature hoodie and a baseball cap pulled low. His face lit up as soon as he saw David. "David!" Adam stood and offered a firm handshake, gripping David's hand with both of his. "I'm so glad you came." David sat down, still unsure what to say. The cafe's warm interior, the smell of fresh coffee and pastries, and the surrealness of the moment made his head spin. I didn't think I'd see you again," David admitted, voice low. Adam chuckled gently. "I had to find you. You didn't have to share that sandwich with me. You had nothing, yet you gave me half. That meant something." David shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "I just figured you looked like you needed it. That's what we do out here, look out for each other." Adam nodded slowly, genuinely moved. "That's what makes you special. That's what most people have forgotten." They talked for over an hour. David shared pieces of his life, the good years, the construction jobs, the injury that spiraled into homelessness. Adam listened intently, never interrupting, his expression a mixture of empathy and frustration at the system that had failed a man like David. "I don't want to be someone's charity case," David confessed at one point. "That's not why I did it." Adam leaned forward, his tone serious. "You're not. I'm not here to rescue you, but I can help you get back on your feet if that's what you want. A second chance." David sat back, overwhelmed. He stared at the steaming mug of coffee in front of him, thinking, could he trust this? Was this real? "I've been burned before," David whispered. "I get it," Adam replied quietly. "No pressure. I'll cover a place to stay, help you connect with people who can guide you, help you find work. The rest? That's up to you. The offer hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. For the first time in a long while, David allowed himself to imagine something other than survival. A bed, a hot shower, a sense of purpose. He met Adam's gaze and nodded slowly. "Okay, let's give it a shot," Adam smiled, relief washing over his face. He stood and extended his hand once more. "Welcome back, David." As they left the cafe together under the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight, neither man noticed the quiet photographer across the street capturing the handshake that would soon symbolize hope to millions around the world. This time, though, the story was just beginning. The next morning, David woke up in a modest studio apartment in West Hollywood. It was small, bare walls, a twin bed, and a second-hand dresser. But to David, it felt like a palace. Clean sheets, hot running water, and a door that locked from the inside were luxuries he had almost forgotten. Adam had insisted on privacy and dignity. There were no press announcements or staged photo ops. Instead, he had quietly arranged the apartment and connected David with a local outreach program run by the Harbor Project, a non-profit dedicated to helping the homeless transition back into society. For the first time in years, David showered without having to watch his belongings or worry about being told to move along. As the warm water ran over his tired body, he leaned against the tiled wall and cried, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming mix of relief and disbelief. The next weeks were not easy. The Harbor Project assigned David a caseworker named Jasmine, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with kind eyes and a deep understanding of life on the streets. "Most people think the hard part is getting a roof over your head," she told him during their first meeting. "But the real work starts now. Rebuilding habits, trust, structure. It's going to take everything you've got." David nodded. "I'm ready." Jasmine helped David apply for a replacement ID, social security card, and eventually a driver's license. She set up appointments with doctors and therapists. Slowly, David began to tackle the small but monumental tasks that would build the foundation of a new life. Each day brought both victories and struggles. Some mornings, David woke up terrified, convinced it had all been a dream. Other times, the weight of past failures crept into his mind. Lost friends, missed chances, the painful estrangement from his sister Maria, who lived in San Diego and whom he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. Despite these challenges, there was progress. David enrolled in vocational training through a community college program recommended by Jasmine. His old skills in construction and carpentry gave him confidence as he practiced in the workshop, his hands remembering movements long forgotten. Adam checked in regularly, but always respected David's independence. They met occasionally for coffee, casual walks, or quiet conversations about life and family. One afternoon, as they sat in Griffith Park overlooking the city, Adam glanced sideways at David. "You're really doing it, man. I'm proud of you." David smiled faintly, brushing crumbs from his lap. "I didn't think I could. Not at my age." Adam shook his head. "You're living proof that there's no expiration date on starting over." As word of David's quiet comeback filtered out, thanks to a few discreet updates from the Harbor Project's social media, people continued to rally around him. Strangers sent handwritten letters of encouragement. Local businesses offered tools and supplies for his training. A retired couple anonymously paid his tuition for an advanced certification program in woodworking. Yet the temptation to retreat into old patterns never fully disappeared. One evening, after a hard day at school and a frustrating visit to the DMV, David walked past a familiar alley where he used to sleep. The cold concrete, the smell of old, a cardboard, the quiet shadows, it all felt oddly comforting. He stood there for a long time, Then he remembered Adam's words, Jasmine's tough but caring voice, and the countless people who had shown him compassion without asking for anything. In return, David turned away from the alley and walked home. In early spring, David completed his vocational program. His instructors praised his dedication and craftsmanship. Soon after, he was offered an entry-level position at a local custom furniture shop, a small family-owned business that believed in second chances. The first paycheck felt surreal. Holding the envelope in his weathered hands, David realized he had something many people took for granted, the power to stand on his own again. At the shop, David became known for his attention to detail and patient mentoring of younger apprentices. He wasn't the fastest worker, but he was meticulous, and his pieces held an authenticity that customers appreciated. Despite all he had gained, David remained humble. He kept a folded copy of the photo, the moment he shared the sandwich with Adam, in his wallet. It reminded him of where he had been and how far he had come. One evening, he finally picked up the phone and dialed the number he had memorized years ago, but never dared call. "Hello?" A soft voice answered. David swallowed hard. "Maria, it's me." There was a stunned pause, then a trembling, tearful response. "David, is it really you?" As the siblings spoke for the first time in over a decade, David felt a weight lift from his chest. Forgiveness, like healing, was not instant, but it had begun, and so had the next chapter of his life. Months passed, and Los Angeles shifted into the vibrant energy of summer. The city pulsed with festivals, music, and warm sunsets that painted the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold. In a small workshop tucked behind a row of trendy storefronts, David Morales stood surrounded by the scent of freshly sanded wood and lacquer. His life had transformed. He now held a steady job, paid rent on time, and had even reunited with his sister Maria. They spoke weekly, rebuilding a bond strained by years of pain and distance. Despite the positive changes, David remained grounded. His experience had given him a perspective few understood. Fame had come and gone, but kindness had left a lasting imprint. One afternoon, Adam Sandler visited the workshop. He wore the same humble hoodie and sneakers, blending easily into the backdrop. David greeted him with a warm handshake and a grin. "You've got sawdust in your hair," Adam joked. David chuckled. "Occupational hazard." Adam looked around at the handcrafted tables and chairs lining the space. "You've come a long way." David nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "I have, but I couldn't have done it alone." They sat on a wooden bench David had built himself. Adam tapped his fingers lightly on the smooth surface. "I've been thinking, what if we create something together? A foundation, a place that helps people like you. Not just temporary help, but long-term support, housing, training, mental health services, the works." David sat in stunned silence. "You mean a program?" he asked slowly. "A movement," Adam corrected gently. "You're living proof that one small act can ripple out in ways no one expects." David's mind raced. He thought of the cold nights on the streets, of the loneliness, of the friends he had lost along the way. If even a few of them had been given a chance like he had, maybe things would have been different. "I'm in," David said quietly. "But on one condition. We call it the Half Sandwich Project." Adam burst into laughter, nodding in full agreement. "Perfect." Over the next months, plans moved forward. Adam used his influence and network, while David provided the insight of lived experience. Together, they built partnerships with local governments, businesses, and non-profits. When the Half Sandwich Project officially launched, it wasn't with red carpets or celebrity appearances. It was a community event at a downtown park where volunteers handed out food, clothes, and information on resources. David stood at the podium, nervous but determined, addressing the crowd. "I'm not a hero," David began. "I'm just a man who had nothing and gave what little he had. That sandwich wasn't about food, it was about seeing someone else as human. That's what this project is about." The applause was heartfelt, not out of spectacle but respect. As the project grew, hundreds of people found help through it. Temporary shelter became permanent housing. Job training turned into employment. Isolated individuals found community. David became a mentor to many, often meeting with program participants at the very bench where his life had unknowingly shifted. He never forgot the unpredictable kindness of strangers. When a young man newly off the streets once offered David half of his sandwich at a mentoring session, David smiled warmly and accepted. The full circle moment brought tears to his eyes. Years later, journalists continued to write about the Half Sandwich Project, but David never sought the spotlight. His satisfaction came from watching others reclaim their dignity and futures. One evening, sitting alone on the familiar bench as the sun dipped behind the Los Angeles skyline, David reflected on the journey. He no longer feared tomorrow. Pain of the past had been transformed into purpose. Adam joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You did good, David." "We did good," David corrected. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping coffee as the city moved around them. Lights flickered on in distant buildings. The faint sound of laughter and music floated on the breeze, an ordinary moment in an extraordinary life, born from the simplest of gestures, the offering of half a sandwich, and the world was a little better because of it.